Well, thank you so much for your wonderful projects. I've just kind of made a summary of some of the main learning points, at least for me, here that you can read. For the hardware, I know this was important to me as manager of a simulation center because I had to talk to the people when we installed the center, server size. I'm in managing the racks and had to negotiate with all the people that put in the hardware and now who can repair it and who's in charge of it and the vendor contracts. So hardware, depending on your particular site, you may or may not have much interaction, but I think you've learned some great new questions to ask. So that was a great learning moment. And thank you so much, Nicole, for the glossary. I think that was a really helpful place for people to start with what do all these terms mean. For the network from Alicia, I think it was a great learning moment for all of us that although we call them all IT professionals, they each have their own subspecialty, and I certainly had to find that as well here in my role. Our mannequins are on the wireless network, so we had to talk with the intra-network people. Our videos are posted to an external website, so we had to talk to system security people to get our videos opened up from a private port that was securely protected through to an outside-facing website. So all of these things I had to learn as an educator regarding our network and file sizes, and now I think it's been useful to have Dropbox where I can drop in really large file sizes as we're integrating systems across our University of Colorado system. We're exchanging files. So those are just some practical applications for me. Particularly on storage, we have some applications that we were considering using that the files would actually be stored in the cloud, but the cloud, is not exactly up in the air. It has to be located somewhere. So when you're storing to the cloud, it just means it's off-site from your system. And we had applications that were going to be stored in New Zealand, so that created a whole bunch of policy and special contract situations for us with having student data that was now going to be stored in a server that was located in a different country, and what should we do to protect that student data. I think Lisa, you gave us an enormous amount of information. I'll have to watch that video several times on universal design for learning. And I think this will be coming more and more to the forefront as we are required to make all of our educational formats conform to accessibility standards for all users. So now you have some helpful cheat sheets, what to do with Word documents, what to do with PowerPoints, font sizes, captioning videos, lots of different things to consider as we make our all of our products accessible. And then Rosa, that was a great interview with security and talking about security from a wide view, not just in nursing. So I think he talked about a lot of very complicated things. I have another slide I want to show you for that. But he had some great messages for us about our own complex passwords and be familiar with what the policies are so that our information, and particularly if you're dealing with student information, or if you're dealing with employee educational and competency information, remains secure. And then for personal data management, thank you, Amanda. This has been an area of continued growth for me. I find that there's areas in education that I want to learn more about that I feel like I don't know very much about. And in that case, I subscribe to listservs. I'm on 2 daily listservs now for simulation. There are also listservs that I have for particular content areas that I want to improve on. I have been subscribed to RSS feeds, and that's from journals. So if I can set my journal preferences to, if there's a particular content area then any articles that fall in that content area will automatically be fed then to my phone, and I'll know that they're there, and then I can go and look them up. So it's just a way to help me keep updated. And then, of course, organizing all of this, I'm finding out that it's much better to be cloud-based than it is on my personal computer, for obvious reasons. If it gets corrupted or stolen or doesn't work. So I'm learning that I need to create lots of notebooks, and my particular preference is OneNote. I'm not a Mac user, otherwise I'd probably be Evernote. But to create notebooks, and within the notebooks have particular pages that then correspond to a way that I can comb through my listservs every day. I can cut and paste, or I can link to specific web pages, and that way I can maintain currency on the information. So here's this next slide here. This is a little explanation of what Rosa, you were telling us about encryption. And this came to the forefront for me because we are in the process of getting the robots, and the robots will have some student video data that we may or may not want accessible to other users. So what I had to show was that the robots, in their transference of data between a student that may be located, in another state and our site, that the data would remain encrypted end to end, because I don't want videos of our simulations being visible on YouTube for other people to see, because that's private student learning experiences. So the company that I first went to said they do have encryption, but it was not end-to-end, which means that between our taking of the video and the point at which it hits the encryption, there was a risk, and that's what it's showing in that top slide. So as you can see right here, so here's your institution, and if you have any gap between when you collect the data and it gets encrypted, then that data is visible. So an easy example of that is when you are text messaging, at the time that you are composing the text message, that text message is visible, it's not yet been encrypted. As soon as you hit send, then it gets encrypted and goes through a public network and stays encrypted until you get to the other phone on the other side, at which time it's briefly visible to another user as well. So as you can see, there's risk then on both ends. It's not end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption means that at the time even that you're composing the message or taking the video and it's not packaged for sending it, it is still encrypted at that time. So that may be something that you need to consider, and it may not be, but another term that you have used and learned during this class. One more thing, again, this is just a nice visual about the cloud. I think all of us have this conception of the cloud being just out in cyberspace somewhere. I would say that the majority, or more and more, all of our data is now becoming cloud-based. So right at the moment, I happen to be using an iPad. The iPad is going to connect with the cloud and drop this video into OneDrive. OneDrive is going to be accessible then to my laptop that's here in my office, and then with my laptop I can retrieve the data and I can post it to your Blackboard course. So your Blackboard learning system or D2L, none of those servers are hosted at your school. What does that mean? That means that the servers or the great big data repositories, the people that have access to your data, are not located on site anymore. That's a good thing in terms of safety and security. The places where your data is stored is in huge data centers across the country, and sometimes it's stored in multiple sites. So it's a good thing. It's a bad thing if you're trying to really be protective of your data and not let anyone else have access to it. So those are also things that we had to consider when we're talking to vendors about software, let's say Shadow Health. So if you want to use Shadow Health for your students, Shadow Health is not hosted at your university. So when the students go on and they do a scenario and they get a grade for that scenario, and that information is hosted off-site, then that student name, the student email, and the grade are all FERPA protected data, and that has to come back to you and be put into your Blackboard or used however you want to use it. But the point is, you have to have an agreement with the off-site company that they will protect that data, that it will not be available for people that want to send product information to the students at the very least, or that want to hack into those off-site storage places and get the personal student data. So those are just some things to consider when you're asking about software and new things you want to try, either in the hospital or with your students. So I think finally, what's the take-home message? Gosh, it sure takes a village. It takes so many people with all specialized branches of knowledge to make this technology work. And you have really highlighted that in your videos, and it's become apparent to me as well in my dealings. And I just want to thank you all for really excellent work. And I think going forward, this is an important area of education that we may not have addressed sufficiently. So thank you very much.